out of gray skies, white snow falls, crystals lying on the ground, melting when the stream calls. No turning back, no running up the hill. The water flows to a place where it can lie still. Reflections that ripple with the breeze. The colors of the rainbow, movement of the trees, supporting boats and swimmers, the surface holds. Through the towns and cities, growing old. Stream talks in the riverside, and the lake looks back into our eyes. Watch the water flow down to the sea. It's giving life to you and me. There's stream talks in the riverside, and the lake looks back into our eyes. Watch the water flow down to the sea. It's giving life to you and me.
雪のひとひら。雪のひとひらはある寒い冬の日、地上はるかな空の高みで生まれました。生まれる前は一体どこにどうしていたのでしょう。気がついたときはひらひらくるくるゆりかごにでも乗ったように風にもてあそばれながら地上を指して舞い降りていくところでした。辺りは暗く声一つなくしーんとしています。雪のひとひらは思わず独りごちました。私はこれからどうなるのだろう。どこから来てどこへ行くのだろう。何のために作られこの世に生まれてきたのだろう。問いかけても答えはなく、見渡す限りは無言の雪、また雪です。彼女は寂しくて心細くてたまらなくなってきました。けれどもその時不思議なことにどこからか何やら懐かしい温かいものが漂ってきて身の回りに立ち込めたのです。どうやら誰かが彼女のことを思いやり優しく見守っていてくれるらしいのでした。寂しさと恐れは消え、 ほのぼのと幸せな思いが彼女を包みました。この安らぎこそは先ほどの問いかけに対する何よりの答えかもしれませんでした。辺りは少しずつ白み始めました。明け方の透き通る光の中で雪のひとひらはキラキラ輝く自分の体を眺め、我ながらきれいだと思いました。周りのおびただしい雪たちも皆似たような美しい結晶でありながら、しかもどれ一つとして同じものはありません。その神秘に雪のひとひらは胸を打たれました。何者かが存在するに違いない。私たちを作り世にあらしめた何者かが。なぜとも知らずそんな気がするのでした。足元にはやがて森や牧場や人家や教会の塔などがうっすらと見え始めました。夜明け近く、雪のひとひらとその仲間たちはとある山里の丘の中腹にふわりと降り立ちました。山のあけぼの、風が雲を吹き払い、やがて素晴らしい光景が雪のひとひらの目の前に繰り広げられました。まず向こうの白い雪山の頂がほのかなバラ色を帯び、それがゆっくりと峰また峰へ広がっていって、ついには辺り全体が薄紅に染め上げられたのです。今では雪のひとひら自身だってこの美しい柔らかい色にとっぷりと染まっているのでした。これもまた誰かの心ある仕業でしょうか。あまりの美しさに思わず声を上げて泣き出したいくらいでした。バラ色は次第に薄れ、変わって金色の朝の光が野山に満ち溢れました。村はようやく眠りから目覚めました。しばらくすると一台のソリが勢いよく丘を下ってきました。乗っているのは真っ赤な頬、青い目、甘色のお下げ髪のはつらつとした女の子で、お弁当を肩にこれから学校へ行くところでした。まあその愛らしいこと、雪のひとひらは思わず見とれました。けれどもあろうことか、ソリはみるみるうちに目の前に迫ってきて、無残にも彼女の真上を通り過ぎたのです。雪のひとひらの悲鳴が引き手の女の子の耳に届いたかどうか、後にはその朗らかな笑い声が冷たい朝の木に漂っているばかりでした。さて、やらいの雪も収まったので、村人たちはまず雪かきをし、それから普段の仕事に取り掛かりました。冴えた冬空にそれらのさまざまな物音がすがすがしく響き渡りました。家畜小屋では農夫が鶏や豚に餌をやっていました。一人の老人が目牛を引いて丘を通りかかりました。目牛の目はいかにも穏やかで優しく、見上げる雪のひとひらの心を和ませた。 晴れ間はしかし長くは続きませんでした。ある夜再び雪が降り始め、雪のひとひらは後から来た仲間たちの下に深く埋もれてしまったのです。もはや何も見えませんでした。はじめのうちはまだ物音だけは聞こえていました。彼女は全身を耳にして聞き慣れた物音をひたすら待ち受けました。人々の足音、教会の鐘の響き、おんどりの時の声、目牛の首の鈴のチリンとなる音。冬はしかしいつ果てるとも知れず、一吹雪ごとに彼女は暗闇の奥深く閉じ込められてゆき、間もなく物音さえほとんど耳に届かぬまでになりました。こうして一人闇に埋もれていると、なんだかこの状態が果てしもなく続くような気がして悲しくてたまりませんでした。そうです。何がつらいと言って一番心細かったのは、お日様やいろんな美しいものを見られぬことよりも、自分が見捨てられ、誰からも顧みられなくなったような気のすることだったのです。本当にそうでしょうか。いえ、そんなはずはありません。生まれて間もないこの身を風のゆりかごの中であんなに優しく温めてくれたその人、山々をバラ色に染めてこの世の美を教えてくれたその人が私のことを忘れてしまったなんて。雪のひとひらはその何者かに向かって精一杯祈りました。どなたか存じませんけれど、私を作ってくださったお方、私を見捨てないで。私は一人ぼっちで怯えているのです。どうぞ今一度この暗闇から連れ出して光を仰がせてください。そして後からおずおずと、あなたが好きなのですもの。そこまで言ってしまうと、もはや寂しさは消え、何か素晴らしいことでも起こりそうな晴れ晴れとした気分になってきました。その時でした。あたかも今の祈りに応えるかのように、頭上から何やら遠い太鼓のような、今まで聞いたこともない不思議な物音が聞こえ始めました。事実、冬は終わろうとしていたのです。音は早春の最初の雨が凍てついた雪の表を打つ音だったのです。雨はやがて少しずつ下まで染み通ってきて、ちょろちょろ地表を流れ始めました。続いてある日、辺りの闇がぼーっと明るみ、エメラルド色に透き通っていったかと思うと、しまいにスーッとベールでも取り除けたように消え失せて、雪のひとひらは降り注ぐ眩しい太陽のもとに再び浮かび出ていました。ありがとう、懐かしいお日様。ああ、またお目にかかれてよかった。彼女は感謝に胸を詰まらせて大声で叫び、それからようやく辺りを見回して改めて目を見張って、 春でした。かつての銀世界はどこへやら、今やすべてがみずみずしく緑に燃え立っていました。至るところ柔らかい若草と木々の新芽と和やかな春の日差しと、周りでは雪解けの水たちがチロチロとせわしないせせらぎを奏でています。雪のひとひらもたまらなくなって、その陽気なリズムに乗って走り出しました。彼女は走り続けました。丘を下り、牧場の目牛の足元をくぐり、岸のすみれの初花を目覚めさせ、小川となってひた走りに走りました。気がつくと雪のひとひらの体は前とは似ても似つかぬものになっていました。かつてはきらめく結晶だったものが、今では清らかに透き通る丸い水の玉で、しかもさながら銀の鏡のように周りのものを片っ端から捉えては映し出すのでした。今一つ著しい変化が知らない間に雪のひとひらの身の上に起こっていました。実はこうして一旦流れ出したら最後、あとはただひたすら走り続けるだけで、命ある限り二度と再び立ち止まれない定めだったのです。もちろんそれは今の彼女には知る由もないことでした。ともかく走ること走ること、なんというスリルと解放感に満ちた毎日でしょう。けれどもやがて思い出してもゾッとする恐ろしい目に出会いました。しばらく前から川幅が狭まって流れがぐんぐん勢いを増してきてはいましたが、それがいきなり目もくらむ高みから硬い板の上へどーっと叩きつけられたのです。目も耳もめちゃくちゃでした。てっきり世の終わりかと思ったのもつかの間、次の瞬間には再び滑るように小川を流れ出していました。水たちは粉引き小屋の水車に巻き込まれただけだったのです。彼女はしかししばらくは震えが止まりませんでした。こんなことならいっそ山頂の万年雪にでもなっていればよかったとさえ思いました。そうです。この先まだどのような危険が待ち構えているかもしれないのに、ちっぽけな女の身が果たして一人で耐えきれるのでしょうか。周りをそれとなく見回しても、みんな他人の運命など我関せずといった風で、力を貸してくれそうな人は誰も見当たりませんでした。
You give me courage. You make me strong. You give me courage to carry on. No matter if the days are dark and the nights are blue, I don't care if I have to wait. I want to be with you. You make me happy. You make me smile. You make me happy. You make it all worthwhile. No matter if the days are dark and the nights are blue, I don't care if I have to wait. I want to be with you. You give me courage. You make me strong. You give me courage to carry on. You make me happy. You make me smile. Yeah. You make
そんなある日、ふと話しかけてきたものがあります。いやあ、雪のひとひらくん、きれいですね、君は。雪のひとひらはびっくりして振り向きました。誰かに声をかけてもらったなんて生まれて初めてです。彼は雨の雫といって大きく頼もしく整った姿でした。あなただってきれいだわ。どこからいらしたの？君と同じに空から。実はずっと君の後についてきたけれど、なかなか声をかける勇気がなくって。勇気だなんてなぜ？いやあんまり君がきれいだから。それにしても水車巡りの時はよく頑張ったね。僕は君を見ていてやっと勇気を振り起こしたんだ。雪のひとひらには思いがけないことばかりでした。ともあれ、こうして話し相手ができたとは何という心強さでしょう。二人並んで漂いながら、雪のひとひらはそっと尋ねました。ね、私たちどうしてこの世に送られてきたのかしら。誰かが私たちを見守っていてくれるとはお思いにならない？わからないね。わかるのはただ、君に会って以来、君のことしか考えられなくなったということだけだ。雪のひとひらくん、僕と一緒に来てくれないか？こんな幸せがあって良いものでしょうか。雪のひとひらはすぐには返事ができませんでした。ありがとう。私でよければ喜んでお供させていただくわ。二人は黙って寄り添うたまま、檻からの夕映えに金色にきらめく波の上を滑らかに滑って行きました。雪のひとひら、雨の雫。二人は恥じらいながら呼び合い抱き合いました。この時からというもの、二人はもはや二人ではなくて一人でした。彼女は雨の雫であり、彼は雪のひとひらでした。こうして一体になっていれば、どんな運命も恐れるには及びませんでした。 川はいつしか大きな湖に入り込んでいました。散々走り続けた後の憩いのひとときです。初夏でした。湖畔には蓮の花が咲き、水鳥が足をそよがせていました。右輪で遊ぶ子供たちの足と戯れ、かわいい笑い声を聞くのも楽しみでした。夫と力を合わせ、古丈すぎるボートや遊覧船を浮かばせてやったこともあります。これはなかなかスリルもあって楽しい仕事でした。二人はやがて小尻から前よりもっと幅広いゆったりした大河に導かれました。またしても旅の始まりでした。ある日、雨の雫が言い出しました。ねえ、僕らの周りでなんだかガヤガヤと可愛らしい声がするみたいだが。気がついてくださったのね。実は私たちの子供が生まれたの。子供たちは4人で、それぞれ雪の雫、雨のひとひら、雪のさやか、父と同じく雨の雫と名付けられました。雪のひとひらは子供たちの世話のために明け暮れぐっと忙しくなりました。すすやほこりを払ってきれいにしてやったり、さまざまな暮らしの知恵を授けてやったりもするのでした。それでもまだ辺りの景色を楽しむゆとりは十分ありました。両岸を走る汽車や車や川沿いのレストランや遠くに望まれる城跡など、行く手にはかなり大きな都会があるらしく、塔や楼閣も川霧の彼方に浮かび上がってきました。それは全く不意の出来事でした。一家は川の岸近くを流れていましたが、いきなり現れた狭い水門に揃って引きずり込まれたのです。雨の雫の顔がにわかに引き締まりました。しまった。どうも怪しい予感がする。夫のこんな顔を見るのはこれが初めてでした。雪のひとひらは思わずぞっとして声を上げて子供たちを身近に抱き寄せました。いいか、こうなったら絶対に離れ離れになるんじゃないぞ。風呂水か皿洗いか、ただあの最悪の敵さえ出てこなければいいが。敵って誰のこと？私にだけそっと教えて、子供たちに悟られないように。いいから僕に任せとけ。彼らは何か強大な力に導かれるままに、真っ暗な地下の水道管を闇雲に突っ走った挙句、いきなりぐんぐん上へ引っ張り上げられました。予感は的中しました。恐るべき旧敵、火がメラメラと繁華街の建物を舐め尽くそうとしているところでした。非常なポンプが彼らを無理やり長いホースに押し込め、空高く吹き上げました。もうおしまいでした。雪のひとひらは最後の絶望的な眼差しを夫の方に投げると、燃え盛る火のるつぼに飛び込んでいったのです。雨の雫の声が後から追いかけてきました。いいか、捨て身で行くんだ。負けたらおしまいだぞ。恐ろしい熱気が周り中から襲いかかってきました。炎の剣は立ちはだかるものすべてを切り伏せ、火の心臓はギラギラと毒々しく輝いています。もうダメです。あと1秒で自分も蒸発して果てるのでしょう。串かけた彼女の耳に夫の最後の言葉がよみがえりました。彼女は今一度湯を振り起こすと、天に向かって声を限りに呼びかけながら、まっしぐらに敵の胸中を目指して突っ込んで行きました。助けてください。私を見守っておいでのお方。夫と子供たちだけはどうぞ助けてやって。雪のひとひらの捨て身の一撃は、 見事敵の心臓をしたたかに貫きました。我に返った時は、彼女は黒焦げの壁を伝って流れ落ちていくところでした。水たちは火に打ち勝って、一家は無事一つに落ち合って再び大河に戻り、広々とした牧場の間をゆっくりと進んで行きました。雪のひとひらの人知れず胸を痛めていることが一つありました。しばらく前から気がついてはいましたが、夫はもはやかつての頼もしくたくましい雨の雫ではなかったのです。戦いだけはどうにか切り抜けたものの、疲れは激しく、黙って物思いに沈んでいることもしばしばでした。時折じっとこちらに注がれている夫の眼差しを感じると、雪のひとひらはわーっと泣き出したいような切なさに駆られるのでした。そしてある朝、折からの微風に両岸のそこここで風車のゆっくりと巡る頃、目覚めると夫はすでに消え失せていたのです。一体こんなことがあっていいものでしょうか。かつては一心同体であった二人のうちから彼だけが失われ、この身が取り残されるなんて。なぜ？誰がどうしてこんなことを？久しく忘れかけていた数々の疑問が再び頭をもたげ始めました。あなたが彼を取り上げられたのでしょうか。もう二度と会わせていただけないのでしょうか。問うてももちろん答えはなく、風に風車のきしむ音ばかりでした。 すすり泣く彼女の周りに集まってきて、しきりに慰めてくれたのは子供たちでした。泣かないで母さん。僕たち決してあなたを置いてはいかないから。子供たちはもはや子供どころか立派に成人していてくれたのです。今となってはこの子らだけが頼りでした。雪のひとひらは悲しみを紛らすために彼らの行く末をあれこれ思い巡らしました。器量よしの雪のしずく、物静かな雪のさやか、冒険好きな雨のひとひら、そして夢見がちな雨のしずく。こうしている暇にも川は流れ流れ、一家は少しずつ河口に近づきつつありました。水も次第に茶色っぽく濁り、雪のひとひらや子供たちの顔色も長旅に疲れた旅人のそれのように土毛色を帯びてきました。それでもそこにはあらゆる旅の終わりにつきもののある種の興奮も混じっていました。間もなくまた新たな生活が始まるのでしょう。期待に胸を弾ませている子供たちを見ると、雪のひとひらは遠からず彼らが膝元を離れていくことを感じないわけにはいきませんでした。若々しい命の盛んな勢いを何者も押しとどめることはできないのでした。いよいよ海へ入るところで、果たして大河は5つの枝道に分かれていました。子供たちはそれぞれ自分の信じる道を選び、まっしぐらにそちらへ走って行きました。どの子も別れ際に母の方をちらっと振り返り、手を振ってみせたきりでした。雪のひとひらはただ一人、折からの入り日に赤々と照り生える大海原に漂い入りました。海というところは今までに経てきたどんな場所とも違い、果てしもなく広く深く神秘的で、しかも絶えず揺れやまず波打っていました。水はせせらぎや湖の爽やかな甘露とは打って変わって塩辛く、さながら苦い涙の味わいでした。ここではまたすべてが途方もなく大きく、浮かんでいる船も規模からして違いました。夫もいない今となっては、これも耐え難い重荷でした。安らぎを求めて深みに降りれば、異形の深海魚の群れが彼女を脅かし、再び水面に舞い戻れば、今度はたけり狂う嵐にもてあそばれて死ぬほどの思いをしたこともあります。もちろん海も時には優しく鏡のように泣いていることもありましたが、そうなるとかえってこの果てしない広さ、虚しさがいたずらに目立ちました。話し相手もない身は孤独という言葉の意味を今こそしみじみとかみしめるのでした。雪のひとひらは知らぬ間に潮に乗って少しずつ南へ運ばれて行きました。嵐も少なくなり、燃え盛る太陽が日増しにギラギラと激しく照りつけるにつれて、生きることの喜びも次第に薄れ、疲れがそれにとって変わりました。最後の日もおそらく間近でした。どのような週末かは分かりませんけれど、いずれにせよこの南国の太陽のせいだと思うと、雪のひとひらは悲しく 少しは逆らってみたくもなりました。かつては彼女にこの世の美を教えてくれたはずの太陽が、ここではあのおぞましい旧敵、火と同じ役目を果たしていたのです。その日は来ました。太陽はことさら彼女一人にじりじりと照りつけて水気を奪い、次第に空へ空へと引き上げて行きました。もはや抗う術もありませんでした。この身は間もなく消え失せるのでした。生まれてこの方の答えのない問いが、これを最後に胸によみがえりました。なぜこの生涯は何故にあったのでしょう。こうしてついにはすべてが無に帰するものを、何の目的があってこのような虚しいことを。海は足元に遠ざかり、頭上には彼女の命のふるさとである白雲が漂っていました。雪のひとひらはもはやその雲に向かって急ぐ小さな水蒸気に過ぎませんでした。その時、霞みかけた彼女の目の前に、生涯のあらゆる出来事がまざまざとよみがえりました。まず山里で女の子のソリの下敷きになったこと、仲間たちの下敷きになったこと、春のせせらぎとしてすみれを目覚めさせたこと、水車を回して人々のパンの粉をひいてやったこと、それから夫や子供たちと共に過ごした至福の日々、恐ろしい火との戦い、喜びと悲しみ、明と暗、大と小。思えばすべては連なり関わり合い、互いに補い合い、一つに溶け合って、えも言われぬ壮大な生の絵巻を繰り広げていたのではありませんか。ささやかな雪のひとひらに過ぎないこの身も、その大きな調和の中では決して無駄ではなく、どこかで何かのために終始役立っていたのです。そう思ったとき、彼女の心は安らぎ、懐かしい温かいものが再び身の回りに立ち込め始めました。今まで求めて得られなかったその何者かの優しいねぎらいの言葉は、今こそ空一面に美しく響き渡っていました。ご苦労様だった小さな雪のひとひら。さあ、ようこそお帰り。
い the sea. It's giving life to you and me. The stream talks and the river sighs. The lake looks back into our eyes. The water flows down to the sea. It's giving life to you and me.
Snowflake by Paul Gallico. The snowflake was born on a cold winter's day, far up in the sky, many miles above the earth. Falling, 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 as gently as lying in a cradle rocked by the wind, drifting downward like a feather, blown this way and that. Snowflake found herself floating in a world she had never known before. She thought to herself, "Here I am, but where did I come from? And what was I then? Where have I been? Where am I going? Who made me and all my brothers and sisters all about me? And why?" There was no answer to these questions. Looking about her, Snowflake could see hundreds upon hundreds of other flakes, tumbling down as far as the eye could reach, and they were silent too. It was strange, Snowflake thought, to see so many of her brothers and sisters, newborn like herself, on every side, and yet to feel so alone. No sooner had she thought this, when it seemed as though she became aware that all about her there was a kind of dear and tender love, the feeling as of someone caring, that filled her through and through with warmth and sweetness. As dawn began to come to the dark world through which Snowflake was tumbling on her long journey to the earth. The sky turned first the blue color of steel, then gray, then pearl. And looking at herself as she tumbled over and over, fragile and airy as the wind that blew her, Snowflake knew that she was beautiful. While there were millions of flakes, born of the same storm, each was different from the other. Snowflake felt grateful to the one who'd given her such beauty, and wished she knew how it came about that in an instant he was able to create them all, each one as lovely as a jewel, and yet no two of them alike. Soon Snowflake could make out objects below her, dark tops of mountains and slopes of snow, forests of trees standing up straight, and on the side of a hill, a village with houses and barns, and a church with a round steeple shaped like an onion. Snowflake landed gently, with hardly a jar, in a field on the mountainside just outside the village, and the journey was over. The wind blew the clouds away, the sky became brighter, and then a miracle began to happen. First, the very tip of the snow-capped mountain peak across the valley was touched with delicate rose. Slowly it spread to the next summit, and then the next. The snow everywhere was touched with it, and soon even the air itself was filled with pinkness, as though the whole world were but the mirror of a rose petal. And Snowflake, too, saw that she was no longer white, but bathed like everything else in this soft and beautiful color. Snowflake thought it was so beautiful, it made her want to cry. It was her first sunrise. Later in the morning, Snowflake had a surprise. Down the hill, on a high wooden sled with steel runners, came a little girl with flaxen pigtails, bright blue eyes, and red cheeks like two rubber balls. She was the merriest little girl, and she sat bravely upright on her sled, wearing a red cap and red mittens on her fingers. As she passed over, the steel runner cut deeply into Snowflake's heart and hurt her cruelly, so that she gave a little cry. But the girl did not hear. She was quickly gone, and only her joyous shouts drifted back in the cold morning air. Now that the storm was over and the day had come, everybody in the village went about his business again. The cold, clear winter's day was filled with the sound of sawing and chopping and hammering and planing, with snuffling and grunting and crowing and clucking. One night, it began to snow again. The new snowstorm lasted all day and all night, and when it was over, Snowflake was buried under many feet of the new fall. It was quite dark, and she could no longer see anything. She strained eagerly for all the well-known sounds that told her that even while she lay buried and forgotten, life in the village was going on. Thus began a new life for Snowflake, and it was not a happy one. Each time there was a fresh storm, or the rain fell and turned the surface to a hard crust of ice, it grew deeper and darker where she lay. Soon, even the sounds barely came through to her. What made Snowflake the saddest was the thought that she had been abandoned by the one who had created her, and whose love had made her feel so happy and secure in the cradle of the wind when first she was born. She said, "Dear one who made me, have you forgotten me? I'm lonely and afraid. Please help me. Take me out of the darkness and let me see the light once more." And having asked that, she added timidly, "I love you." As soon as she had said that, she no longer felt so lonely, but happy and excited instead, as though perhaps something wonderful might be about to happen to her. It began first with a strange drumming that sounded from overhead and seemed to go on endlessly. It was the noise made by rain when first it falls in the early spring upon the hard crust of the winter's snow. The long rains at last had filtered down from above, and the waters were moving restlessly beneath the layers of frozen snow and ice that still covered the earth. The darkness in which she had lived so long turned to deep blue, then emerald green, changing to yellow as though a strong light was shining through a heavy veil. The next moment, as though by magic, the veil was lifted. Overhead the sun, warm and strong, burned from a cloudless sky. Snowflake was free once again. Her heart gave a great shout. The sun! The sun! Dearly beloved sun! How glad I am to see you. What a different world it was from the mass of grey and white into which she had been born. Now everything was fresh and green and carpeted with flowers. All about her now there was the rushing, liquid music of running waters. And because of the great joy and happiness she felt, Snowflake too began to run. She ran through a quiet wood and awakened the first violet beneath its broad green leaf. She ran. And as she did so, she noticed for the first time that something strange had happened to her. A most wondrous and exciting change had taken place. Snowflake was no longer a lace-like creature of stars and crosses, triangles and squares, all woven into one pattern that was all her own. Now she was round and as pure as the morning light, crystal clear, and like a tiny silver mirror, she was able to catch and give back every color in the world about her. And there was another change that had taken place as well. Snowflake could not stop running once she'd started down the hill. She did not know that she had begun a long journey, that she must run evermore, but not until the end of her days would she ever again be still. Not long after, Snowflake had an adventure which frightened her. The banks of the stream narrowed, and Snowflake could hear a faraway rushing and roaring, and somehow she knew that it would have to do with her. And then with a rumble like thunder, over she went, into a black abyss, and the next moment, gasping, choking, drowning, she was whipped to a white froth, crushed, torn and churned by the great wooden wheel of a mill. She could not even cry for help, so shaken was she by what was happening to her. She was sure that she had reached the end of her days and was about to perish. Then the wheel sank beneath the weight of the water, and Snowflake found herself freed again. A moment later, she was again part of the calm stream, gliding along past newly budded trees. But back at the mill, she heard a woman saying to the miller, "What beautiful white flour! I will buy a kilo and bake bread for my husband and children." She was still shaken and trembling because of what had happened to her at the mill, wondering what new perils lay before her and whether she could have the courage and strength to meet them. It was the being alone that was the most discouraging. True, she was surrounded on all sides by others like herself, but this, she found, made for one's being even lonelier, for they were all busy with themselves, and nowhere did she hear a friendly voice, nor did anyone seem to care about her or what happened to her. Until one bright warm day, all this was changed. She heard a voice beside her say, "Hello, you're a snowflake, aren't you? I think you're beautiful." Snowflake was astonished and pleased. It was the first time that anyone had noticed her or spoken to her directly. "Here I am," said the voice right beside her. "I'm a raindrop." He was large, strong, and handsome in a pear-shaped way. How good it was to have someone to talk to. She asked, "Where did you come from?" "Out of the sky, like yourself," Raindrop replied. "I was born in a cloud many months ago, but did not fall until only a few days ago. I followed you down the mountain, but I didn't dare speak to you before." "No?" Snowflake asked. "Why?" "Because you are so beautiful." Now Raindrop spoke more shyly. "You were brave in that mill race. I was watching you, and it gave me courage." A most delicious feeling stole over Snowflake. She asked, "Who made us? Why did we fall? Why were we sent here? Did you ever feel as though someone loved you very much and was watching over you?" Raindrop replied, "I do not know. I only know that since I first saw you, I have not been able to think of anything else. Only you. Will you come with me, Snowflake?" For a time then, Snowflake and Raindrop glided along silently side by side down the blue and golden path made by the reflection of the setting sun in the sky. "Dear Snowflake," Raindrop said. "Dear Raindrop," Snowflake replied shyly. Then they united, one with the other. And thereafter, they continued to flow with the river and were no longer two, but one. United, they felt secure against anything that might befall them. Sometime later, Snowflake cried out, "Raindrop, where are we? What has become of our river?" Raindrop looked. The banks of the river past which they had been gliding for so long were no longer there. "Oh," said Raindrop, who knew many things, "we have flowed into a lake. How splendid. Now we may rest for a while." Snowflake and Raindrop remained in the lake for many days and weeks, resting, drifting idly, and learning many things about the world in which they were living. Sometimes they floated close to the shore amidst green lily pads, crowned with yellow and white pond lilies, where the water birds rustled in the reeds and frogs and turtles sunned themselves on old logs. The voices of the frogs changed from their spring to their summer songs, and the turtles stared with sleepy eyes. Time passed. There came a day when Raindrop said to Snowflake, "Have you noticed anything?" "I do believe we're moving again," she replied. "Yes, we have come to the end of the lake." The long, happy rest was over. The journey had begun again. One day, not long after they had left the lake and were floating with the river through a green valley, Raindrop said, "Snowflake, dear, whose are all those many little voices I seem to hear all about us? And to whom do you speak from time to time?" Snowflake smiled shyly and said gently, "I was wondering when you'd notice. Those are our children, dear Raindrop. They're called Snowdrop, Rainflake, Snow Crystal, and Raindrop Minor." Snowflake seemed from then on to be busy from morning until night, keeping them clean, brushing away bits of oil or soot or dust, watching to see that they did not stray too far from her side. Thus one day seemed to pass like another in contentment and interest. They happened to be traveling close to the left bank at that time, and suddenly, before they were aware of it, a narrow opening appeared in it, with a kind of floor of stone paving that was slanted sharply downhill for a short distance, so that they were unexpectedly swept into it with a rush. Raindrop looked grave. "I do not like this at all," he said. Snowflake now became alarmed herself, for she'd never seen Raindrop so serious or disturbed. She cried, "What is happening? Are we in danger?" "I do not know," Raindrop replied, "but keep the children together and stay close to me. Whatever, we must not be separated now." He dropped his voice in a whisper. "If only we do not meet our greatest enemy." Snowflake said softly, "Who is our greatest enemy, Raindrop? Whisper it to me. I don't want the children to see how frightened I am." "Shh," Raindrop replied. "Have courage. Remember, I'm with you." But the tunnel through which they were dashing grew more chill and narrow all the time. Faster, faster, faster. Some mighty power had them in its grip. Then without warning, they felt themselves being snatched upwards. Raindrop cried, "Courage, Snowflake! It is our most bitter foe, fire!" There was a house in a crowded city street before her. Black smoke and yellow flames were pouring from the roof and windows. Orange tongues of fire were licking upwards. Then, with the powerful stream of water shot from the brass nozzle of the hose held by the fireman, Snowflake was hurled straight for the center of the fiery furnace. The heart of the fire glowed red and evil. Bright blades of yellow flames leaped like sword strokes to destroy all in their path. Gasping for life, all but seared by the blast from the raging furnace, Snowflake was near to giving way to despair and defeat. She recalled what Raindrop had said. "Give all your strength, all your heart and soul. We must win." And in that moment, she thought of the one from whom her heart and soul had come, and she cried out to him, "Help us! Remember when I was a child you loved me. If you must, take me, but spare Raindrop and my children." In that instant, Snowflake and all those who were rallied beside her in the fight against the Red Destroyer struck at the glowing heart of the living flame and vanquished it. When, much later, she returned to her senses, it was to find herself trickling down the side of the blackened building, all soiled and dirtied from the soot and cinders. At that instant, with a surge of joy, Snowflake saw Raindrop and the children flowing down a charred beam nearby, and forgetting about herself in the happiness of finding them, she felt her strength return. But the greatest change Snowflake was sad to see, and which filled her with foreboding, had taken place in Raindrop. The strain of the heroic struggle against the fire had left him altered. His pear-shaped figure was no longer as smooth and robust as it had been, and he never seemed to recover his former gay and joyous spirit. He looked worn and older, and was apt to have long periods when he was moody and silent. Yet always he was loving and kind to Snowflake and the children. When his eyes rested upon Snowflake, they were filled with such tenderness that her own heart was swelled nearly to bursting. One morning, as they drifted slowly on the bosom of the broad, placid river, passing through flat meadows, where many windmills, stirred by the just awakened breeze, revolved slowly against the pale sky, Snowflake became aware that Raindrop was no longer with her. The question that tormented her brought back to her thoughts of the mysteries of her childhood, and she asked the one who had made her in the long ago, "Was it you who called him? Shall I ever see him again?" There was no reply, but the wind rustling the sails of the windmills. The children crowded around her to comfort her. They put their arms around her and said, "Don't cry, we will never leave you." Snowflake looked at them, smiling through her grief, and wondered. For they were no longer children. They had grown up. Now that Raindrop was gone, they were all she had. And to take her mind off grieving for him, she made plans for them. Time and the river flowed on. Clay, stirred up from a shallow bottom, turned the clear, sparkling blue of the waters to dull brown. It was like a soiled and tired traveler after a long trip, and Snowflake and the children took on this new color as well. Yet, as it is near to the finish of every journey, there was all the stir and excitement of impending arrival somewhere. The feeling that everything thereafter would be new and different. And deep in her heart, Snowflake knew that the time was not far distant, when, in spite of the promises they had made, the children must go away. At its mouth, where it finally entered the sea, the great river divided into 5, wandering past the scattered islands of the sunken land. Pausing only to bid a brief goodbye to Snowflake, each of the children chose a different branch. Each thought that his or her branch would lead most quickly to adventure and success, and when each of them reached the bend in the river branch, he or she paused only to turn around and wave a last farewell, and then was gone. Alone, Snowflake took the path to the blood-red west and the great sea. In the sea, all was changed from everything Snowflake had ever known. Its waters were deep, mysterious, and restless. Always the surface appeared moving and troubled, and Snowflake became a part of its aimless procession. The waters of the vast and boundless ocean were salt, and from then on, Snowflake always seemed to have in her mouth the bitter taste of tears. Everything in the sea was enormous compared with what Snowflake had known in the past. The waves, the currents, the fish, and the ships. The giant cargo and passenger ships, weighing many thousands of tons, crushed her with their great bulk. Now that Raindrop was no longer there to share the burden, the entire weight of these ocean giants fell upon her. When the weather was bad, she tried sinking into the green and gloomy depths, where it was always calm and still. But she was frightened there by the finny giants that came swimming up to stare with great round eyes as large as dinner plates. The storms too were terrifying. The raging winds whipped the surface of the sea into living mountains of grey waters, their crests white-capped with salt froth racing before the gale. Yet the sea could be calm and friendly too, and there were days when the surface was as still as her lovely lake had been, with the sunshine sparkling on blue waters that were hardly more than ruffled by a delicate wind. But how vast and lonely it was at those times. Snowflake appeared to be the center of a wide and empty circle, made by the line where the sea met the sky all about her, and she learned what it was to be lonely. While she did not know where she was going, Snowflake had been driven steadily southwards. The water became warmer, the sun hotter, the seas calmer, and the storms less frequent. Gradually, Snowflake became aware of a change that was taking place in her. She'd felt that for some time she'd been growing weaker. The great zest for life and love of living was beginning to pass. And Snowflake knew that she must be approaching the end of her days. How this end was to take place, what it would be like, or where she would go, Snowflake could not tell. but she was aware that somehow would have to do with the sun. She did not understand this, and it saddened her. But she remembered how happy she'd been the first time she'd seen it rise, and how she'd longed for it through the dark days when she'd lain buried beneath the snow on the mountainside. Then came the day when the sun, beating out of a brazen sky, appeared to concentrate its strength and power on her alone. She felt that she was being drawn upward from the sea, that the liquid life she had so loved was being drained from her, and that soon she would not be anymore. And in those last moments, her thoughts turned back to the days when she'd been young and to the questions that had never been answered. Why? What was the purpose of it all? And above all, who? The sea lay below her now. Already her form was altering from a lovely crystal drop. Soon there would be nothing left but a tiny feather of vapor adrift in the sky. High overhead floated a soft white cloud. Was that her destination? Snowflake remembered that it was in a cloud she'd been born. Now her whole life seemed to roll by before her dimming eyes. She had fallen upon a mountainside, and a little girl with a red cap and mittens had passed over her on a sled. She'd gone tumbling down the hillside in the spring and had awakened a sleeping violet in a wood. She'd been caught in a mill race and turned the miller's wheel to grind wheat so that a woman could bake a loaf of bread for her husband and her children. She had merged with a dear and tender raindrop whom she loved, and with him entered a lake where she'd spent the happiest days of her life. She thought of her children and the contentment of raindrop on the long journey they'd made together. With a shudder, she remembered the awful duel with fire which she'd won. As she neared the white cloud drifting overhead, there came to her, in one brief flash of understanding, something of the vast and beautiful design woven by him who had created all. How thoughtful and tender, how exquisitely beautiful, careful and loving was the plan behind all that had happened to her from the very day she was born. And as she thought of the exquisite harmony of the universe in which she had been sent to play her part, peace and contentment came to Snowflake. Fainter and fainter beat her heart. Soon she would be Snowflake no more, but only a part of the vast, silent spaces of the heavens, a filmy fragment of an autumn cloud. And the last thing she could remember before the sun drew her up into the heart of the cloud above was that all about her, the air and the sky, seemed to ring with the tender and loving words, "Well done, little snowflake. Come home to me now."
Through all the days, through all the nights, how we sang, how we played, how my